All right, congratulations everybody. We are here. We made it to the C1X table. Today we get to talk to Michael Sizemore and Isaac Heinen. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Super excited to have you. So we'll jump right in a little bit just so people know TechDisc. This is like it's like a startup for you guys. Can you just jump us kind of in a little bit on just TechDisc? What is it?
Yeah, so TechDisc is a launch monitor. So it's a little sensor on the disc, and it measures everything about your throw, just in the first 2 or 3 feet of flight. So you can throw it in a net really close. You don't need to throw it in a field. You don't need to be far back. Measures your speed, spin, all your angles, and then it will also simulate the flight for you. And we just started this about a little more than a year ago.
Yeah.
So we're building all these just a couple blocks up the road here. And so far it's been going great, trying to introduce a new tool, a new technology into the sport.
I think it's kind of crazy impressive how I don't know, high end it feels. Like I just learned about it, I feel like this year, which is kind of crazy because we're like friends, or like we're in the friends circle. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned it when you came to like one of our putting nights, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. I didn't even know Michael has a new job, none of this stuff. But then it was like a week later, Kevin brought one in or something, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it's like a fully developed thing. And we were throwing it, and it was perfect, and it was super fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've really gone from 0 to 100 very quickly with this. And I mean, I think evidenced by your selling out pre-orders and all of this. I mean, it just seems to be going very well from the outside.
Yeah,
and
it's got a good start. I think it helps that a lot of people don't see the pre-work that goes into it. When Isaac was first involved, actually a while before it launched, because he's obviously one of the best disc golfers that I know, and happens to not live too far from me. So we got him maybe the first or second unit that really we ever had to beta test early on. So okay. I think you had it 4 or 5 or 6 months before it was actually public.
I had it very early, but my gut reaction is kind of like you, Michael, had been telling me, is yeah, I'm working on this thing. I want you to help me test it out. And it's it's probably going to be pretty rough. And then through it, it's it just told me my nose angle and speed in 3 seconds. Oh, okay, this thing is cool.
I think it took 4 seconds back then. Yeah.
4 seconds.
That still have to walk over, look at the phone or whatever, and it's pretty much there. But yeah, you were telling a funny, or at least I heard somebody was telling me this funny story. You were telling me a funny story. You just kind of brought yours in to be tweaked, but it was probably that original one. And you were oh my gosh, there's no serial number or something like that on there. You definitely got a very early one.
I'd kind of lost track of what you had. And so he brought it in, he's like, hey, something's not quite right with it. And did it lose its calibration or?
In one of the firmware, it never was calibrated.
Oh yeah.
Which was before we even started calibrating the units. And it got behind on a firmware upgrade. So gravity was broken, I think, and it was pulling the wrong way.
Yeah, and so we hooked it up to our web app to take a look at what was going on. And it didn't have a serial number. I'm like, oh boy. So it was literally before we started keeping records, which was a long time ago.
Yep.
So yeah, it was fun.
That is not a problem now, for sure.
No, not a problem now. Not a problem now. We started keeping records long before we launched, just not quite that long.
No, the amount of data you guys are collecting and things like that is probably insane at this point.
Yeah. We generally just look at the last 6 months, but we've had 2.1 million throws in the last 6 months.
Wow.
And so you've got a really nice normal distribution of stats from just the general disc golf population out there, which is fun to see.
Yeah. You collect more than just the 6 metrics. You have 6 metrics that you're presenting, but it's more than that. Right? You're keeping a lot of the detail as well. Yeah.
So the way we get those 6 metrics is by measuring the position and the orientation of the disc through the backswing into the throw. Mm-hmm. But when we were trying to figure out what do we actually show to the user, we show the backswing but it's not as easily digestible as the 6 metrics. So we really boil that down into the 6 metrics, but all that data is there. And so you can actually go in and see your speed and spin all the way through the pull through, the release. After release, the simulation, you can see all the stats all the way down. So there's almost more data than we can nicely show to people in there.
And we're going to get into some of that stuff for sure. But I want to rewind here, jump in the DeLorean a little bit. But we got some stuff on the table here that you just kind of sent me a picture this morning, and it was nice because it's sort of in line, because we definitely want to get back to just like, okay, you're into disc golf now heavily, but like, where did it start? Like, you know, do you remember like your first disc you ever got?
Yeah, so I actually almost brought it tonight. I didn't do it. Maybe I should have. Time kind of gets away from you. And when we were talking about this, you know, texting around beforehand, setting it up, I didn't realize that I was then, I think Isaac as well, we're kind of the old guys in terms of disc golf in the group. And so we started talking about, you know, collegiates from back in the day and some of the old discs and, you know, old media production companies. And realized you guys hadn't heard of Billy Crump and Clash DVDs. And we're like, we got to fix that. So I brought you a nice collection. Yeah, with some Clash DVDs.
Here, I'll hold it up. I don't know if we can switch to this guy real quick.
Yeah, so
Billy Crump was electric. He was like the original, like, insane commentator,
Yes.
just like brought so much energy and hype. And it was like you're watching like really old camera footage, and he like might as well have been commentating like an MMA match or something. It was just like
my 12-year-old literally
electric.
walked in as I was watching this tonight and goes, why is the video quality so bad? I'm like, well, because this is 14 years old.
This was high
on a
definition
much
time.
smaller budget.
Yeah, for sure. So, but this is like, and we were talking like a little bit too, like some of the nostalgia that I have is like just knowing what like the first CD I ever bought, you know, like mine was Casey and JoJo, embarrassing or not, but like, I don't think people understand like now, like people like Gannon Burr who just have the YouTube and, you know, and things like that. It's like, well, if you wanted to watch, like you got to get your hands on a DVD.
You gotta get your hands on DVD.
So is this like a pro shop thing? Is this like...
So I think this was in the age of early YouTube, late DVDs. I was too late for the VHS era for disc golf.
Okay,
thankfully.
yeah.
But so this is like 2007, 2008, 2009. There was some disc golf on YouTube. There was Disc Golf Monthly, right? Disc Golf Monthly?
Yep. Disc Golf Monthly,
And
which
so
was
whenever-
mostly like Northeastern, like small kind of B tiers that might have a few random players like a Steve Brinster or Mike Moser or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, I got to play a tournament where Matt LaCourte was like the TD, watched me throw a shot, and he said, nice shot, kid. It's like, I made it. But like when that Disc Golf Monthly video dropped every month, that was like the biggest deal in the disc golf media landscape.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Clash DVDs was it. So I bought that one because we were headed to Collegiate Nationals in 2011. And this was my way to get intel on the course ahead of time.
Notre Dame, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought like an old Notre Dame disc, which is sick.
It doesn't feel that old to me, but yeah, it is old now.
Yeah, we're saying old, which is like hilarious because
You're right. You're right.
I'm a big Ultimate guy. Like my whole collegiate career is in Ultimate, and I am now literally people to my face are saying I'm the old guy, and I'm like I'm 38. I feel like a 25-year-old still, but yeah, you're talking like 2009 or whatever. Like that's like that's just after I graduated from college. It's like it's not that far away, but it's kind of like weirdly, like you said.
Well, especially the way that the landscape of sport continues to change, and
Yes.
like the media has gotten so good and it just keeps evolving, where it's like anything pre-20, like 16 and Jomez and that, like it feels old. And then you hit COVID and then it's like, wait, that's like 2 generations
That's
before.
true.
Yeah, it kind of accelerated that generation skip. Yeah.
Yep. And so you can really see that like there's a lot of people that were starting like 2015, 2016 into 2020 that were kind of brought on with like the Ricky, Paul, like more things on YouTube.
That's me.
And so there's a whole group of players from there, but then there's a whole group of players before that as
Yeah.
well. And, you know, I don't know quite where I joined 2009, 2010, I think is when my PDGA was. And so like, I feel like I was the original, like start of the YouTube generation, because there's like a couple Discraft, like how to throw really far. And it's like Robbie Bratton just throwing like a 2-finger predator, like 500 feet and just like throw your arm off. It's like, I just watched that video like 500 times trying to figure out how to throw a disc, because that's all there was.
Yeah. It was really interesting to watch the coverage of the Collegiate Nationals in 2010. Just the hole design, like there were maybe half the holes were under 300 feet. You know, like this was a challenging, like top level amateur course, and just the kind of what was appropriate for top level AMs back then would be a little bit silly today. And like to be on site for that course, we had like a flyover with a crop duster, like there was a national anthem. There was some serious production value that went into that thing.
Wow.
From my perspective as a 2011 disc golfer. And so like that was really as good as it got for disc golf. And it looks a little bit silly now.
Collegiate was really cool because of that production value. I played for KU, so Rock Chalk.
Yes.
That had 3 years, but it was just like you said, they did a Star Spangled Banner. They had like team introductions and like kind of like a tunnel walkthrough type deal and flyovers, like whatever. Like the mayor was out there throwing the first throw and really built it up. And I think like even to this day, like the production value and like the event perspective of collegiates was always like a really cool deal that made it feel like this is legit. Like this isn't me just going into some park and playing something. Like this is real.
Yeah, because I think you played a little bit of KU, or at least you like went out a couple times or something like that for Ultimate.
So when I first got to Lawrence, I played Ultimate up in Creighton for 1 year. But then when I came down to Lawrence, I played like half a season of Ultimate, and then disc golf as well. And it wasn't working. Both the throws together, I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
And I was making money from disc golf, and I chose disc golf because
I wanted to ask that question tonight, was just at least for you, because, you know, again, I'm an Ultimate guy who now is disc golf, but I still play Summer League Ultimate. But it's like, so like, what was the thing that sort of like, you know, tipped the scale? Be like, I'm going disc golf.
If I had the time, I would have picked both. Like I still love both. But it kind of became a point of like, I was working, trying to go to school. Like I couldn't commit to both.
Yeah.
And disc golf was the first love. So like I started disc golf I lived in a town where I was the weird kid throwing Frisbees. Like I was probably the only one. I'd go play the course over and over and over again. And so disc golf was kind of the original love. I wound up in Nebraska, like didn't have a car. It's kind of like, I still want to throw Frisbees. Like we'll try out for Ultimate. And had a blast. Like I loved Ultimate. I loved the athleticness of it. Just kind of trying to be an athlete and go out there and run and chase people down. And it was so fun. But then when it kind of came time to choose, it was a pretty easy choice. It was sad. And I still did summer leagues and fall leagues when I could. But yeah.
Yeah. So what, like, if we try to think back to that, go back to like the first disc, or just like how did you even find disc golf? Did someone get you into it? Did you where did you discover it?
Yeah, weirdly enough, my origins sort of wind up in Lawrence because I had a couple cousins. Michael actually knows one of those cousins, Jason Kroge, had kind of taken us out. They lived pretty close to Centennial Park there. And so summer trips, coming and visiting cousins, we'd sometimes just go randomly play. I'm the middle child of 5, and so I have an older brother that like if my older brother did something, I had to be better than him. So like he took up skateboarding. I was like, well, I have to be a better skateboarder than you. And so he was really good friends with my older cousin. He'd gotten a disc and like, you know, they would go out and play. And then I was like, well, I have to be better than you. And he was really influential in getting the course put in my hometown. Oh, cool. And so when he was kind of going to school in the town, was involved with like a Rotaract club. And so he kind of got the course put in the ground, but then I was like, well, I still got to be better than you. And so my original goal was to beat my brother. And then it was where I live, it's called Plainview. And so it was very flat, like there's a plain view, like it's brown, it's flat, there's no trees. So kind of wide open, but I go out to the course and it's like, first I got to beat my brother. And I was like, well, now I got to be the best in the city. And then that didn't take too much longer. And then it was like, well, I'm going to start playing some tournaments. And I would just make loops on the course of like the one tree is like, well, now I got to throw right of the tree to practice an Anheuser. Now I got to throw left of a tree. It's like, you know, this time I have to skip it. I would just come up with as many creative shots because every once in a while I would watch disc golf on YouTube, or I had a Vibram Open DVD that I'd watch over and over. It's like, oh, I got to figure out how to play in the trees. And so that was the only way I could think of is like, you know, find a couple field goal posts or something and try to throw through those to kind of replicate
Sounds
that.
like self-motivated for sure.
Very much.
Yeah. Did you say like, where did you grow up at? Where did you find?
So I actually grew up right over here in Lenexa.
Okay.
And I think it was in high school. I had a friend, I think Griffin, took me out to Prairie Center Park just as something to do as high school kids.
Yeah.
And I think he shared some discs that he had and we played around. And I wasn't like love at first throw, but it was at least in my brain. And so it was something to do I bought some discs from like Gotta Go, Gotta Throw or something, some early disc golf e-commerce, and then I had some discs to go play with and just did it once in a while.
Yep.
But then in college, it really hit harder because in South Bend, Indiana, there was a really good disc golf scene, and there was more time, which helped out, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I spent a couple summers up there doing research and just playing disc golf all the time.
Did
So
you get into the competitive side as well, or were you more just like always recreational?
I ended up getting into the more competitive side at a kind of lower scale than Isaac, but in South Bend, their leagues were doubles, and they would split you into A and B pool players. And to this day, this is still probably my favorite format, just for like growing a club and meeting people. But like an A pool player would get paired up with a B pool player, which was great for the B pool players. Like if you weren't that good, you got paired up with someone who was good.
Yeah.
And if you took one or two of your shots, like for the round, you felt great because you really weren't expected to contribute anything. And then like eventually they took more and more of your shots. And then eventually everybody knew who you were and you could kind of graduate to the A pool. And so, you know, when I was in the better half of the B pool, I was starting to make money at leagues. Because if you get a decent A pooler paired up with a good B pooler, like you can clean up. And then I graduated A pool, and then I was not making money at leagues anymore. But that progression really is what got me going. Then I started playing tournaments. Probably peaked at like 9:30 back in the day before kids.
Yeah. So we won't stay, but okay. Like, so we'll jump forward now, right? So now, I guess the question I'm getting at that I just recently heard, like we were all hanging out at your house, like on Friday night, having a good time. And I think I asked this question here that I'll just ask it again, which I thought was kind of surprising, but I think I heard that like, John Carino's the other partner in all of this, but I just assumed that he like reached out to you through like what you were doing with Bushnell and things like that. But it sounds like, no, it was like kind of the opposite direction, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an electrical engineer. I love sensors and circuit boards. I'd always wanted to do a sensor on a disc. I've got another engineer friend in town who I used to work with who had actually put sensors on a disc on his own, not really related to me. And just couldn't quite make sense of the data that was coming out of it. And so I knew I wanted to do something in there. I was actually working on a separate project that I would love to pick up again someday. But I was trying to make something happen with circuit boards on a disc. And I was talking to some of the Pro Tour guys, and they said, hey, there's this guy who demoed his side project at OTB in 2022. It's got a sensor on a disc. Like that's really the only thing we know of that's putting a sensor on a disc. And so I found him online, sent an email that night, and then just started talking every week from then to try to feel out like, what did he actually have? Did we want to work together? How real was this going to be?
Yeah.
And so it was about Christmas, January of 2023 that we decided, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to launch in May. We're going to make a go of it.
When was that first kind of email sent and the conversation like started with John?
Probably,
I guess Carino, he likes to be called Carino.
Yeah,
right?
I'd have to check. It was probably like September of 22.
Okay, so September to January, you said that was sort of the span of like you guys just, is this a thing?
Yeah.
What, like, was that, that's a long time to be going back and forth, especially weekly. So was it like a hard decision? Was it like, no, this is easy, I just want to make sure it's right? Like what, does that make sense? Like what
I mean, the opportunity was definitely there in the sport. It was definitely there in disc golf. The question was, from what he had built, how easy was that going to be to turn into a product, and how easy was that product going to be to turn into a profitable business? Because with a hardware business, you've got to be a lot more careful with the numbers of the business model. If you tweak it wrong a little bit, you can really be stuck and in a dead end. And so there was a lot of just, how do we like do the push button on the top? Like a lot of people thought they wanted it totally waterproof, which I still think would be great, but was it worth sacrificing, having an easy push button and an easy LED with light pipe and easy charging with the USB-C? Just a lot of those product decisions of, yeah, we've got a circuit board, but what does the product need to be? And then even just taking the metrics and putting them in the 2x3 grid and like, deciding this is going to be the thing. These are the 6 metrics we're going to show. We're not going to show other things that we possibly could show that might be interesting, but we're going to boil it down and focus on just these. So a lot of those decisions went into it, and it took us that long to figure out, okay, we can make this reliably, we can make it into an attractive product, and that product can actually be sold at a reasonable price so we can make a business out of this.
Yeah.
So those things those take time.
Yeah. Okay. So it was sort of that process that like really kind of like, okay, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't just sort of like, do I want to leave my job right now and do this? It's not like a kind of a decision, right?
That was the other thing was if I was going to leave my job for this, I had to be pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big jump
yeah.
to go from like a big, large company, pretty secure. You were, doing super well there, I think. Like everybody, trusted you, like looked up to you, I feel like. So yeah, like kind of a big jump.
Yeah. And I'd always thought and told people I wanted to do a startup and start my own business. But by this point I was 34 with 4 kids. And so it, maybe not the most ideal time to jump into a startup.
Yeah.
So I had to be pretty sure it was going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you calling me and like asking like, all right, like Scott, like what are you guys seeing at UDisc? Like, what does this look like? Just like kind of like reassure. And I was like, yeah, I mean, everything's like still growing. Right. So, I mean, I don't know, like how did that play into your decision along with like everything else that you're kind of lining up in your...
It was big. Cause I really didn't know what to expect out of the disc golf, just market in general. I think there'd been pretty steady, like 15% growth from the PDGA stats for a long time, but COVID happened and it was great, but it's also become, I think, kind of terrible. Some definitely growing pains where that kind of growth wasn't sustainable. And so, I wasn't sure, would we get back to the 15% growth? Would we crater a little bit and be kind of a zombie for a couple of years before picking back up? Like, was this actually the worst time to start a disc golf business? Yeah. Didn't want to mess up the timing.
Yeah. And now that it's been a year and a half, 2 years almost, like where do you feel like that kind of played out as you hoped, expected, or better, like from how everything's going so far?
Yeah, it's about on par, maybe a little bit behind where we were hoping for, but I think we had some pretty big aspirations too.
As we all do.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall it's been obviously really, really good. The product's been really well accepted. We get people, reaching out to us all the time saying like, I fixed my nose angle within like 20 throws. It took me like 300 throws.
I was like, that's
to
fast.
fix it.
That's pretty fast.
So good for them.
He's a nose angle king now.
Yeah, now I've got it. Now I've got it.
Oh, nice.
But it took a long time. So and we've been able to build a good business out of it. Hired Isaac as our operations manager, helped me make sure that everything actually gets done in the day, which is super important with a hardware business. Yeah.
We talked today how it never always gets done anyways. So even with multiple people there, there's still always something.
Someday it'll all get done. Maybe tomorrow.
It's a dream.
Yeah.
So what's the 8 to 5 for you? Like, let's just say like today's Monday, right? So like, what was like a Monday like at TechDisc for you?
Yeah. Monday is kind of our one day of a lot of meetings, but most days will generally look like in the morning, I'll spend 30 minutes to an hour actually like building discs. I don't do hardly anything on the building side except for one step. And so I'll do that one step in the morning for the like 8 to 9, and then I'll do that one step in the evening from like 4 to 5. And really Isaac takes the rest of it from there with the rest of our team. So then the rest of the day, we had our kind of weekly team review today. So looked at the stats, how many throws did we get last week? Who was throwing it? What customer support issues did we have the past week? What needs to get done this week so that we can ship out the orders we've got. And then just meeting with the rest of our team to make sure we're have the plan for the week.
So you're like literally still working physically on the product while also, are you CEO?
Yeah.
Also like role as CEO. So multiple hats still at this level, right?
Yeah, I would say the main things I do are build discs, customer service, which probably maybe the top time sink for me right now. And then all the other CEO, like product development, and then also biz dev and everything else.
And running booths at tournaments and stuff.
I try to do less of that.
What is an operations manager? Just this is for like, I think people that just want to get into disc golf somehow. Like they want to have a job in disc golf. So I'm just curious what does operations manager even mean at, a tech company like this?
And how do you go from Parks and Rec to operations manager?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've been in the public sector almost 10 years. And, talking about stable job and having multiple kids, it was kind of one of those of like, I worked for city government. It's pretty stable. I have a really good job supporting the family. But I had coffee with Michael and I was like, this is too good. Like, I can't say no to this. I want to pursue this. And TechDisc had been so influential in my game. And disc golf had kind of always just been one of those things for me of like, I'm just a player. Like, I'm never going to work in it, just a player. So to kind of finally get the opportunity to like jump in and really kind of take over. There's a lot of people management that goes into it. There's a lot of kind of keeping an eye on inventory and kind of projecting, hey, what are the parts we need? What are the discs we're going to need? How long is it going to take to build these, ship them out? We have orders that are still coming in daily. We're trying to break into Europe. So there's all just sorts of things that we're kind of trying to make sure that gets pieced together and we're keeping on track with. And I've learned so much. I'm only about 3 months in. But it's amazing like how quickly it just kind of just seems normal and natural and you start communicating with people. And, it's interesting where there's a couple of companies that we work with where it's people that, used to be players that probably still play that, you're kind of emailing back and forth on the business side. So it is always kind of a funny, I think for a lot of people within the industry, playing was the first love and figured out how to make a career of it. So I'm kind of excited to be in that same boat of, being able to work in the sport and help grow it and change it and revolutionize it. So,
yeah.
There's a lot of moving pieces that I just got to make sure moving in the right spots in the right times so that the customers, the promises that we make to customers actually get fulfilled. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough, but I used to do a lot more building from like 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I do very little of that now, which was a huge success.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to get into a little bit of that, how you kind of evolved the process over time. So you were building the first boards in your basement, soldering them yourself. Like you're just taking these components and putting them together. Like what kind of steps do you to make that a repeatable process up to your standards, like bringing on new people? Kind of walk us through like maybe some of the core evolutions of operationalizing this.
Yeah. So we've got a wall of some of the discs in our office, which when we get the signage up, we'll kind of show the evolution of this was what we made, what I made in my basement in like April of 23, where I made 2 of them. And then like I made 30 of them. And then I made 100 of them. And then we made 400 of them. And then like it was me and my wife putting them together. And then it was me and my wife and Jake putting them together. And then it was us and Jake and Cooper and just kind of kept adding to the team. And eventually we got our office space, thankfully, because it was tough in a basement. But I mean, a lot of the process was Carino and I had done a lot of experimentation on different ways to attach the disc. And then I had a helpful background in semiconductors. And a lot of the cleaning processes that they use there was very helpful guidance as well. We still use some of that today. But some of it was trial and error where, we thought we had a process pretty well controlled. And then we found out, actually, these circuit boards are a little dirtier than we thought they were. And it caused a customer issue. And so then that was an all hands on deck. Let's go back, look at the records. When was this, this serial number failed. Who built this?
You had it.
What happened? Let's diagnose this and fix that process. And so it's definitely still a lot of like verbal tribal knowledge passed down amongst people. But I think we've got a pretty robust process and have a much better sense of what's important in it now. But I'm sure we'll make mistakes in the future and have another emergency and
That's just the
solving the
game,
problem.
right? That's just the game. But
We have a Reddit post posted up in our office of a broken puck, and it just says, lest we forget. So keeps us on track that we keep them built well.
So my first job, definitely a tangent. My first job was for a company that makes light switches and dimmers. And they had designed this light switch, this dimmer for consumers, like buy in Home Depot. And they had like the button on it that turned it on and off, rated for, I don't know, like 20 years of life or 30 years of life, which is perfectly fine. But they didn't count for people using it in the bathroom, which gets turned on and off like a lot more often during a day than a normal house light does. And so people started putting this in their bathroom and the switch would fail. And so they just got boatloads of returns coming back. And they built this polycarbonate obelisk with all the return units. That was the obelisk of failure. And so it was in the atrium in the engineering building. And so you'd walk by that every day and you're like, let's not make an obelisk of failure today.
oh, jeez, yeah.
Let's not screw that up today. So that's our little homage to that.
Okay.
Little reminder that you got to be careful because what you do matters.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting a physical product out into the world that you lose control of it once it's out there.
Yep.
And like, you don't know what conditions it's going to be in. And I know you have some like remote troubleshooting stuff, but even then you're still flying kind of blind, and it can take much longer to troubleshoot something than it can to like just like give them a new disc. Sometimes.
Fortunately, it's literally a bundle of sensors. So like we can get a lot of info off of the disc itself, but these end up in a pool or a hot tub or, breaking a hole in drywall. And, if anything could happen to the disc, it has happened by now.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a challenge?
Please don't try.
Yeah, don't do that for sure. So I think a lot of people too are thinking like, is this for me? Or is this like, so when you're thinking of this product, we're making a product, you're trying to put it together as a product that can be sold, but like in your head, like what market is it going into? Like, do you definitely see it as like, no, anybody can get it? Or is like, oh, well, we kind of view it as like, it's definitely like a coaching tool. Like is there a specific market, or is it pretty broad?
So I'm glad you asked that question with this group because the market was Scott. I swear I used you as our like customer profile a million times. Cause I'd love for you to tell your kind of story of getting into disc golf as a player. Cause I think I met you like 4 or 6 months after you'd started playing.
Maybe like a year.
Yeah.
I started like in 2018, like, so kind of in that after Jomez, but like there's lots of YouTube. Brendan got me into it. But yeah, I think the self-improvement was what drove me. So like, that's probably what you're referring to is like, I loved getting better and like getting out to the field. So yeah.
And I think I asked you something about a form video or something. And I'm pretty sure you shared like a Google Drive with me that had like gigabytes of videos of you throwing.
I had like recorded like on a little tripod I bought on Amazon and just like record. Like the only way I could do it was to record like literally just 15 minutes of slow-mo on my iPhone and then just like seek through it over, however many 25 throws or whatever, and then go pick them all up in the field. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that was exactly like it was very clear how hungry you were to get better. Mm-hmm. And I think most disc golfers remember, that period in their disc golf life where you're just like, you want to play 3 times a day. Like you will do crazy stuff and record gigabytes of video of yourself to get better. Yep. And so that was exactly like the customer profile for our original vision of TechDisc.
Yeah. So it's definitely like for everyone. Individuals who are hungry to want to get better, don't know why they're throwing nose up, you can't see yourself throw. This really kind of uncovers everything there.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people who love playing disc golf just casually with their friends and, don't get that hunger. But for anyone who's like had that hunger before, I'm just like, I'm so excited. I got it. Like, I can't sleep. I got to get better at this. Yeah. That's exactly who this is for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we see it from, we have a couple people that work for us that have zero desire to play competitive disc golf, but both want to throw 500 plus feet. So like, there's no competition like in their brain except that self-improvement piece. And then even for myself, like it was super influential in me and just learning like, hey, these are the things I need to improve. Like I was already a really good player, but like I kept wanting to go and get better. And I think we're seeing it with some of the top pros. Like there's more and more people kind of expressing interest or like, hey, I want a TechDisc. Like I think I need a TechDisc. And so it's kind of cool to see kind of the variance and the player profile of the people that really do want it, want to improve.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, because I worked at Garmin for like a while, and we were making watches, records all this like an ungodly amount of data comes out of these watches and stuff like that. But the biggest hurdle has always just been like, okay, cool, like look at this data, but like I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with that. Yeah. Like I guess my question is just like, okay, we've got the 6 pieces of data, but like how do I even use this to get better? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the easiest thing, I think disc golf did us a favor, like disc golf YouTube and disc golf coaching on YouTube is huge. So probably most disc golfers who have experienced that kind of hunger have checked out some videos from Overthrow or other disc golf coaches, and they've heard this one weird tip to get more spin on your backhands. And they're like, man, I wonder if that works.
Yep.
And so, or this one, pour the coffee to get your nose down. I'm like, it's not working for me. But really TechDisc is the only way to find out, did that actually work for you? And so that's one of the best use cases, like diagnose what your problems are. And then there's no shortage of content on YouTube and the web and, friends' tips to kind of help you. Hey, how'd you get your nose angle down? How'd you, my spin's low. What do you do with your wrist and the backswing?
Yeah.
Like your spin is great. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to start to self-diagnose and start to improve. But we'd love to see more coaches get out there. It's probably a pretty big opportunity for that, because when you're coaching with a TechDisc, it's a game changer for that. We haven't seen that many coaches really taking coaching seriously. There's a few really good ones out there.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a service that's widely available enough yet.
No, I think some people like you. I mean, you've signed up for a couple with like Philo and things like that to like, hey, or Stokely, and just like show up to the course. But it's like, I've never been a part of that, but I feel like, yeah, it was super helpful, but there's no data there necessarily. They're just like trying to give you little tips and pointers. And it's sort of like from a subjective opinion, right? But I noticed that too when we had the throwing night here one night where you came up and we got to all throw in the net. I mean, I do think it's really fun to do it with a group of people, because just hearing you call out like, oh, interesting, like your nose angle is like 2 degrees, like -2 degrees, like, and all this stuff. And you can immediately be like, well, I'm not throwing the fastest out of everyone here, but I'm getting sort of the same amount of feet in my throw. And we're all like going, well, why? And all that kind of stuff. It was really kind of eye-opening.
Well, and like you can out-throw me like every day, and it's like, oh, it's your nose angle is so different from mine. And I'm like, maybe that's it. Cause like your speed wasn't all that different.
No.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I think if anything, it's interesting how many people are learning like the physics behind a disc flight, like how spin like changes the flight of a disc, or what speed does to it, or nose angle. Like it is just interesting the amount of people that kind of talk about it. It's like, well, I need more spin, or I need nose angle. But I think for us, like, it's interesting when we do these events or we work things, like we can diagnose throws so quickly. You see someone with 5 degrees nose up and -2 degree launch angle. It's like, oh, this person air bounces. And it's funny when we start playing rounds, like I played around with Cooper not that long ago, and he threw it kind of down and the disc raised. And I was like, yeah, I've seen you throw this TechDisc like a million times with negative nose angle positive nose angle and negative launch angle. And so it's really interesting when you kind of see it play out in the course. And then even like not that long ago, we heard Gannon. Gannon's kind of just consciously changed his throw to lower his spin. So he was one of the most spinny throwers and intentionally changed his throw because he's like, I think I get more accuracy with less spin. And so like, it's just really interesting to kind of see what players are doing with it.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole going down the disc golf flight physics. I was talking to a longtime disc golfer today even, and we were talking about, the simulator and what different metrics mean. And I said, forehand turns over more because it has less spin. He goes, wait. Doesn't more spin make a disc turn over? Like, because in 2010, certainly when I was coming up, like that was common knowledge. More spin made a disc turn over. Like that was just how it worked. Turns out it's the opposite. And it took me a long time to believe it, but like I could see his mind being blown as I was telling him this. I was like, if you want to throw an understable disc and keep it on an angle, you've got to really spin it. Otherwise it's going to flip over and burn over. And he was just like, oh no, my whole life has been a lie.
Oh no.
But it's so fun. Like once you get past those things, it's so fun to like really understand what you're doing at a deeper level.
Okay. I was going to ask, like, there's accuracy and there's power, right? So would you have like sort of like 2 data points to focus on for accuracy and maybe 2 data points that you'd focus on for distance? Are they the same, just different, or?
Yeah. So,
or does that question not even like make sense?
no, I've got an answer, but what would you say?
It's kind of hard to think. The easy one for me is power. Speed, no question, for power. And then I'd probably view a couple different things with like spin and nose angle. For me, I'm a really spinny thrower, and so that's not much of a concern, but I think there's probably some factor that plays in there. But the nose angle is huge. When I first started throwing with the TechDisc, I probably like 4-ish to 5 degrees nose up, and I'd always suspected I was nose up, but like never could figure out anything different, and I didn't really have a way of proving it. But yeah, since I've been able to more consistently get nose down, like notice huge distance gains. And so it's interesting, even just from like consistency. And that might be an answer for the accuracy is the nose angles, because, you know, out here in Kansas and Missouri, like especially playing in the wind, if that nose angle is down, you're in so much more control of your flight than if that nose angle's up. So nose angle is actually probably huge for an accuracy standpoint.
And I would say understanding what your like max power stats are and what your comfortable control shot stats are. Not to pick on Cooper too much, but I think when he really powers up, like he gets the nose up even more. And like when he is conscious and like trying to throw a control shot, he's got much better control of the nose angle. And so it's pretty useful like to understand what's your max speed shot, but also do a set of 5 or 10 throws at your max speed, a set of 5 or 10 at your comfortable speed, and see what your range of metrics are. You know, because you're only going to get one shot. It's going to be somewhere in your range. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if your max power range is huge, you know, you don't know which end that expected value is going to come out on.
Yeah. Where are you missing, right? Like what side are you missing on it is kind of the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're going to throw like 2 degrees nose up to 2 degrees nose down, like that's a big difference. Mm-hmm. And if you're out in an open field throwing a distance competition, that's fine.
Which is wild. I think we all know that like the degrees are actually like more minimal than you think. It's kind of wild to hear it be like, man, I was really throwing 5 degrees nose up. It's like, it's only 5 degrees. Does it really affect it that much? It's like, yeah, it does.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, does the parting line of a disc like really affect the flight that much? Like it does.
Yeah. It does.
These little, you know, small things do matter.
And kind of feeding off some of that a little bit, it is interesting how I think you can kind of use some of those stock shots or kind of looking into some of the metrics. And this was probably, I played a Q Series at Kansas City Wide Open this last weekend, and it was probably the first tournament I've played that I think I actually implemented 2 different throws, which sounds really weird, but I now know like how to essentially maximize my power better than I ever have. And so you get to some long holes like a hole 10 at Bad Rock Creek or hole 18, and I can push the distance limit like really, really well. But throughout a lot of the course, when you're in the woods, I'm not looking for that distance limit. I'm looking for that control shot. And I know what that stock shot kind of like feels like. And so like my distance shot, like there's a few things that happens where it's coming off like my back fingers versus my front fingers. I'm loaded deeper into kind of, I guess, your power pocket, if that's what you want to call it. There's a couple other things going on with my brace that I'm like consciously doing on those throws. And that's a relatively new throw for me. So somewhere along the way, like maybe this will become more standard, where the other throw I've been doing for almost 15 years. So it's one of those that this feels a lot more natural, a lot more accurate. But just even something like that, the ability to kind of be like, I'm going to implement a distance throw versus just like a standard throw,
right,
is like a weird tool I've never been able to play with, but like I have the confidence to go after a 500-foot hole that I didn't have before.
And that's like a new tool through like sort of just seeing the data through TechDisc and being like, oh, okay, like
some
if
of
I do
it's
this, it does this.
come through. Like, honestly, since I've started throwing, we're talking about love of the game, like trying to play 3 hours a day. Like, I don't have that ability, but it's nice that like TechDisc can almost like make it possible in like 20-minute increments.
Yeah.
So it's interesting on some of those of just kind of learning some of those with the TechDisc and then being able to bring it out and implement. I'm sorry, I forgot kind of the direction of the question.
No, you're just talking about two different throws, and I'm just wondering if like, well, did you discover the two different kind of throws
and
through
so-
just sort of throwing through a net, being like, oh, I can control my nose angle if I throw like this.
Well,
versus
the nose angle, actually, as dumb as this sounds, I spent like 7 months trying to fix my nose angle, like tried all the things, the pouring the coffee, the turning the key, nothing worked. I changed my grip and it basically got me there like right away.
That's the secret.
As dumb as it sounds, like there's some of those things, I guess I can share, but how many form coaches are like, put it in the palm of your hand, like, put your fingers together and like, that's your grip. And I have really small hands and really short fingers. And I just, for whatever reason, am unable to throw nose down. I basically just put my thumb way forward. And so like, it looks a lot different than what most people would have. But pretty consistently, I'm between like 2 degrees nose up, 2 degrees nose down.
Okay, so you're sort of changing your grip a little bit, and then maybe something else. But it's through like, oh, but I can see the data change if I do these things.
The most recent example is somewhere along the way, we were just kind of analyzing some video, like kind of testing some things out. And I was like, I think I'm standing too tall. Like, I think I need to squat more in my throw. And so literally I just bent my legs and I got 2 miles an hour more. Like every throw, super consistent. So it was like, one day I was like, if I had a really good throw, I was throwing 70 miles an hour. And then like the next day it was like, oh, I can throw 72 on command. Like,
well, and that's the beauty of this thing is like, you can't do that in a field.
Just immediate feedback. Yeah.
And when you're in the field, I think the difference between like 20 feet on a drive, you're like, yeah, I kind of got a hold of that. But when you walk up to that drive, it doesn't feel that much different. But like when you see the difference between a 70 and a 72 mile an hour throw, you can kind of start getting that sense, I think, a little better when you see a metric.
Yeah. And back to your point about like, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I want to play all the time. I'm definitely a field work person. I actually just really enjoy going to the field, but it's definitely like, I have 4 kids myself. So it's like, going to a field, I can get so many more throws in if I were to go like play a round of golf. So it's just like, well, I'd rather go throw a ton, and definitely with this, it's like, well, if you've got a net at your house, put the kids to bed and like, go throw for honestly 25 minutes. You're still going to get like 100 throws that are like very dialed on a specific data that you're trying to like correct.
Yeah, I was going to say, Scott was definitely our kind of target user initially. Our kind of, assumed, unsaid target user was definitely parents. Yeah, anyone who's got, a full-time job or other responsibilities and wants to get in like a quick hit of training in 20 minutes and like actually be productive with it. Because it's so hard to like pack up your stuff in the car, go to the field, be productive in the field for 10 minutes and then, drive back home. But with TechDisc, you can get, as many throws as you want into a net in 20 minutes. And you actually have to be aware of your pitch count so that you're not overdoing it.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah. Well, because I think naturally you're just like, oh, I got 62 on that one. Like, let me see if I can go a little harder. I feel like we always end up just being like, but who can? We just like are just chucking as hard as we possibly can because we're just like speed records.
Well, and you can tell like once you start like trying your hardest and your speed goes down, it's probably time to take a break and do something else.
I think we definitely got to that point when we were like, let's get back to the putting night. Like,
Yeah. Well, I really liked what we did there for a little bit after we got out the max speed throws. We started to like try to hit some numbers. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to take us like, because we talked about accuracy, but like what about consistency? Like that's almost more important, like in a wood scenario or whatever. It's just I need to throw this with Heiser or with an Anheuser. I mean, Brendan, you were like trying to throw Anheuser and it was totally flat. It's like, okay, like how can I repeatedly do this thing? So have you seen folks like do that sort of training or like, would you recommend that?
Not quite as much as I think will happen in the future. One of the things I've noticed in myself when I started with the rangefinders at Bushnell, I started practicing my distances like to rangefinder distances. So I didn't think about my mid-range as my mid range, I thought about it as like a 240 foot fan grip. Like that's what I could do.
Yep.
And my T-bird became, something different. And so I started thinking in terms of distances. After working with TechDisc for a while, I started looking at holes and diagnosing, like breaking it down. Like, okay, this is a positive launch angle, negative nose angle, flat hyzer, comfortable, like for me, 48 miles an hour, and that'll get there. I don't need to do anything crazy. Or no, this is actually like a low ceiling, low launch angle. I actually want the nose flat to up and like push it forward. And I think once you start, I'd be curious to hear if you've started to think about holes in that kind of way yet or not. But one of my favorite games that we play sometimes is kind of a
thinking about
metric course where you got to call your shot. So you try to hit like 5-degree hyzer and 5-degree nose and 5-degree launch.
Ooh.
And get closest to that. And that's the ultimate in control.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's another game that we play sometimes, and I think this was originally like kind of like a radar gun type game, but you basically try to get the most throws in a row, like increasing your speed. Where it's like, you get a 15 mile an hour throw, a 60 mile an hour throw. And it's actually a really fun game for like all skill levels where like, while my range is huge, like there's some people that can be like just super dialed in, like 1 mile an hour more, 1 mile an hour more, where it's like every time I'm throwing, it's like 4 miles an hour more, 5 miles. But like there's interesting, like from like a putt to a throw, like, okay, what's the difference in my miles per hour? Like where can I max out a putt? And then like, where can I slow my throw down to the most?
Yes.
And like, where's this gap? And kind of what he was talking about with like nose angles. It's like, okay, wait a second. If I'm throwing, it's going to be a 40 mile an hour approach with 5 degrees nose up. But if I'm putting, this might only be a 35 mile an hour throw with like 7 degrees nose down. So it's like, okay, now all of a sudden, like I have a gap and I have to learn to fix that gap, which I might not have realized I had that gap before outside of playing some of these.
I think it's that
games.
gap that everyone's sitting there staring in the fairway from circle 2 or something like that. And they're like, I don't think I can jump putt that far, but it feels too close to throw. It's
That
like, I
game
feel like
really
it's all the
exposes that gap well. Cause like you get past your putting and like you jump putting and then you're like, I can't drive. Like that's 20 miles an hour more. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
It's so awkward until you train for it and realize that the gap is there.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that's probably the most notable gap, but I think there's other gaps sometimes where it's like you might have like a window of like 40 to 45 that you feel super comfortable, but 45 to 50, like it's kind of a crapshoot of what I'm going to actually hit. Like I'm going to throw this as hard as I can, or, whatever, if you're going like forehand, backhand. And it's like, so there's certain distances that I know I can be really consistent in hitting this, and there's other distances like I can't be consistent hitting this, so I got to practice that. Right. And like you said, it kind of exposes the holes in your game in kind of a different way that you don't necessarily see on the course, but like it reaps benefits once you figure out that hole.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch to is like you are definitely working on simulators. I've come to the booth a couple times now. You've always got the simulator up. You've like mapped out holes, things like that, which is like really fun, especially when I was like in Emporia and you like had a hole 15 the island, 14.
Yeah, 16, yeah.
16. Yeah. That was really fun. But just like, I feel like you have sort of this pie in the sky sort of like vision of what this is really going to be. Is this like in your mind is like someday like there's no budget and we're building a Topgolf? Or is it like, what does this look like as far as the simulator aspect goes to?
Yeah, I mean, we've really got a good model in golf. Really, like anything that a golf launch monitor can do, we think a disc golf launch monitor should be able to do as well. And so there's a lot of stuff that golf launch monitors can do now, like play a simulated round of golf and play different players across the country and world. And we've got a long ways to go before we're done implementing that. But I think the way that we've done this specifically, where you're actually tracking the disc all the way through the backswing and pull through, probably gives us some more opportunities to really like compare, your Gannon Burrs, your Paul McBeths. Like we can look at their backswing. How do they get the disc from back here to generate their pro stats? And like, how does that compare to what you're doing from back here to the hit point? And we don't have it done yet, but we should be capable of like really telling you where are you where are you lacking? Where do you need to focus on, like really, really specifically in your swing?
Like compare, like am I picking, like compare me to Paul McBeth? Or are you just saying, okay, we see where the pro stats are sort of like averaging out to do what they do, and we're going to sort of put you in like where are you at in compared to the average, or like what?
I think you can take that however you want to take it.
Okay.
I think the easiest way is to see like, okay, your stats are here on the normal curve. Like, you're above average in speed, you're below average in spin, but you could go as far as you want to go and say, currently, I think if you look on the website right now, you'll see one of my throws from March of last year. I think it's the first public throw that's on there. And if you look at it, my backswing dips down and then comes back up and gets into a slot. And like, I don't need to do that. That's probably not helping me any.
Yeah.
And so, we've got the tools and the data to tell you when you tell me like, hey, you're still dipping down. Don't do that.
Okay.
Like, okay, now you're reaching up higher. That was good. Do that more. Mm-hmm. And then you can also compare like is there a pro who is dipping down and they get increased speed out of that? I don't think there is, but if there was, like, you could know maybe that's, maybe that is an okay thing to do. So you can kind of pick your goal based on real people that are out there, real throws that are out there, and then start to tailor your backswing to get to that goal.
And I think the backswing's super interesting of like, you'll kind of see a lot of people and it kind of dances around. But Anthony Barella threw it at DDO and literally was like the cleanest line backswing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I mean, everyone looked at it and was just in awe because you see ours and they're all like squiggle marks. And his was like just a perfect, you could see it. It was a perfect throw, and it went like 86 miles an hour. So like, it was also
what
a
you're
perfect
talking
throw.
about is like we see it in golf. It's like, well, they'll show like Tiger Woods like club head drawn, and that's what you're talking about, right? Is when you're talking about seeing their line.
Yeah, your arms, your club head.
Yeah, and we show it just the disc with no like person at all. So it's kind of this disembodied disc, which is interesting because you can see it purely objectively.
Yes,
you just see a geometric line in 3D space, which is. Can be ugly at times, or like Anthony Barella can be really, really pretty.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you show it to him? Did he react to it at all, or did?
Oh yeah, he loved it.
Okay.
He loved it. Yeah, he put up some really good numbers.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
He threw 86 in loafers.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
to lead into that, like people are going to want to hear what records. Is there like some standout records? 86. I heard RPMs were pretty high.
I believe 86 is the speed record so far. I think for a little bit it was David Wiggins Jr. throwing a 360 at 84 miles an hour. I think 86 is probably it. I expect that to stand for a little while. Yeah. Spin used to be at, Gannon used to have it like 1685-ish. And that stood for a while. Who broke that?
Zach Nash.
Zach Nash broke. Was that at OTB?
It was OTB. Yeah. He hit like 1790 or 1780.
I don't think it was that high, but
he's hit 1800 before, but it wasn't like at OTB. It was some other one, but it's an absurd amount of spin.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're seeing 1500, you're elite. If you're seeing beyond 1700, you're like one of one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What about, like, we hear timing is so important. So, like, have you looked at ways of measuring that or, like, quantifying timing, like, from your feet and your hips and, like, everything kind of going together?
Yeah. We don't have a good way of doing that just yet. I think there's a lot of timing. Again, we're just getting data off of the disc. But even with that, I think there's ways we could tell you when your acceleration starts, when it peaks, what does that slope look like of the acceleration from the time zero to the hit point? Because I've got a sneaking suspicion for myself. I think my acceleration peaks probably here, and then I slow down into the hit, which is why I'm not playing Casey Wide Open. But I think we'll be introducing some more tools to get more video into like your understanding of how you're producing those throw metrics.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like everyone's got their swing, it's sort of their style. And like, it doesn't necessarily mean everybody's got to like fall into this thing because even pros all look very, very different. But there are always going to come down to like where are they accelerating through? You know, people like Seppo Pai is like one of my favorite plays of all time. And, you know, people are always talking about like, you got to have like the eagle reach back and things like that. It's like, well, I mean, Seppo doesn't have a huge reach back and he can throw 600. Like, so it's just like, well, what is it, the thing that they're all doing that is allowing the thing to happen, you know? So
it's not to go back to the DVD, but that's one of the fun things from that DVD is the diversity of throwing styles was fantastic.
Oh, I bet.
Like everyone throws like Matteo. Well, like with the uniqueness.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Matteo.
Yeah. Most of it looked kind of terrible by today's standards. But there were so many different styles.
Yeah. So next 5 years, I mean, like we talked a little bit about simulators and things like that, but is there sort of a next 5 year TechDisc kind of goal?
I mean, not a numerical goal that I would share here.
No,
staying in business is the first goal.
For sure.
So we can,
you guys are still very young.
Keep feeding our families.
Yes.
But like I said earlier on, I think anything that a golf launch monitor does, we'd like that to be available to disc golfers as well.
I think everybody would love that.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of hay that we can make, and it may take 5 years for like a culture shift to happen around how do we describe discs and how do manufacturers sell discs and the flight numbers of discs. It may finally be time for another shift in flight numbers. So
Please elaborate. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, flight numbers today are a marketing tool for a company to describe what they're trying to do with that disc. Like, how should people think about that disc?
Right.
This disc is faster than a T-bird. It's, this TL over here, right? This is similar speed to a T-bird, but flippier than a T-bird. But the turn and the speed numbers don't mean anything on their own. And, there's not a good reason for that other than it's hard to measure those things. But I don't think we're too far away from it being not so hard to measure those things. So I think you can, probably imagine a world where we've got better measured descriptions of discs. You look at a disc online, add it to your virtual TechDisc bag and throw it and see how it flies for you.
And it's going to be the simulated flight of your disc.
Right. Yeah.
Not the manufacturer spec.
Well, I mean, I'd love to have eventually manufacturers describing their discs in physics terms that our TechDisc simulator can actually make those useful for people.
Yeah, because that's one thing that's really fun about the simulator is it'll tell you what disc you're throwing, right? And so then there are applied flight numbers to that, but then it's going to fly different for Isaac than it is to me, to Scott, to you, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is
we're all throwing different.
That's what everybody talks about flight numbers. Well, that's not the flight numbers for me. It's like, well, no, it's not because you're not throwing 70 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were asking flight numbers to do a little bit too much, right? Trying to be one flight description for all disc golfers, and all disc golfers throw so differently.
Yeah.
It's even the difference in a 70 mile an hour throw with 1,000 RPMs and a 70 mile an hour throw with 1,400 RPMs. Those are two totally different throws. So if you guys are both trying to throw, whatever disc, a destroyer or whatever, those destroyers are going to fly extremely different for you.
Yeah. So the next 5 years is probably we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to see how the market accepts the TechDisc and where it takes it, right? Because that's sort of part of the game. It's just well, how are people, accepting this into the market, and how are they actually using it, and what are they finding valuable and things like that, right? So
yeah, I mean, ultimately, whatever helps people get better faster.
Yeah.
Right. If you can go from 800 to 950 rated, doing a couple training sessions, 20 minutes a night in your garage, that's great.
Oh my God.
Is there something we can do to get you there faster? That's great too.
Yes.
So hopefully we can really push the envelope in helping people get better faster.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do any of you want to add anything else? I've got some gifts for you guys, but is there anything you want before we head out?
The only thing I can kind of think of that's been interesting with all these TechDisc throws is I think we've learned that a lot of people's run-ups don't do anything for them. And most people throw the exact same miles an hour standstill as they do with a run-up.
That's wild.
So something to mess
worse.
with or take a look at. But there's a guy, Blitz, Blitz DG or something. This is YouTube. Like there's like 74, 75 standstill. And it's like, it's absurd. He'll probably figure out how to get a run up and go even more, but it's been a really interesting like learning piece for a lot of people. It's like, your standstill can go really far, and that's something I've even used several times. Like I had a really tricky shot this last weekend that was like, the footing was just really awkward. It's like, I know I can throw a standstill, so I don't need to run up. So I'm just going to stand still it, and I can still throw as hard as I need to.
It sounds like it's just super fun to find out what you are really capable of and what you're not. Like,
I'm no question a better player than like when I started with it. And it's just from knowledge.
Yeah.
Like it's not like.
Now you know.
Yep.
Right now, I feel like without it, you don't really know. Like I already know that I can't throw anhyzer. I know that I also can't throw flat. And then I got this and like, it's true. There it is. It's right there.
Yeah,
like
I know for sure.
I confirmed it, and it's something that I got to work on, if I want to throw those nice force overs and things like that, which I always struggle with. But I'm definitely looking forward to start training with these things for sure.
Yeah. I'm excited to just see your business continue to grow, and just like where you've come in the last year and a half, 2 years is just incredible. Like I think the simulator like totally caught me by surprise. I was just like, oh my goodness, like you guys have been killing it. So just super excited to see where you take it.
Yeah, thanks. It feels slow in like small chunks day to day, but look back where we were a year ago today and to now, like it's pretty good.
You look back at his disc and you're like, oh my God, I forgot we even gave you that.
Yeah. No, I'm hopeful that like this will start to surface the next generation of disc golfers who like see stats from pros, and then you can see their own stats and can kind of understand, okay, I'm not at that level yet, but if I had 5 miles an hour, I'll get there. And then they can understand when they're at the level to know, like, actually, I'm just as good as these guys on tour. Maybe I should go take a chance at it. I'm really hopeful that like the next Climo, the next Macbeth, like, takes a chance on disc golf, gets their metrics up there, and says, "No, I've got what it takes to get out there. Yeah, I can see it. I've got the data."
Yeah. Can I give you guys some gifts for you?
We'll take it.
Yes, Blase. Thank you so much. Got a little stack here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so thank you, Grip, for sponsoring the show. Thank you so much. But we got some nice hats for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Get these out. Here you go. We got some nice patches.
Yeah.
Go on your bags if you got a Grip bag. Hopefully you do, but even more, I'm going to keep the patches coming.
Fun fact, I had one of the original... I was within the first like 650 grip bags ever sold. The old school one. I think I have the tag somewhere still, because I came with bag tags. Everyone that got a grip bag I don't think that's still a thing, but everyone that had them. And so like you're supposed to play for tags.
I think my tag is on the bag over there, because I got it when it played Collegiate Nationals. It was like right when Grip launched. And so I think I don't know what the tag number is. I got to go look, but got one of their like wooden grip bag tags.
Yes.
Yeah, those were awesome.
You and I can play for it.
That was so exciting.
This is one of my favorite ones. Good vibes only. This is on my bag for sure. Nice. We've also got some stickers, which are super nice. These are super cool. These are pretty new. These are actually Glow Flex Minis. I think these are nice. Instead of being like the shape of a Frisbee, these just slip in really well, but they're also a rubber flex, so they don't slip out. But these are super nice. And if you get angry, you can squeeze them. They won't break.
That's cool.
Obviously, everybody's got to have towels. You can't have enough towels.
Oh, have you guys put a TechDisc on a Mini yet?
No, we thought about doing that as an April Fool's joke. Don't give away our next April Fool's.
I think you just
I would like to see that. I would like to see that.
And this is pretty cool. I think this is a very underrated product from Grip. I don't think people are taking advantage of this enough, but this is a disc divider. So it goes into your main compartment. It can fit in any disc golf bag, but just think of it as like your drawer divider. Like I've got my spoons, my forks, my knives. So a lot of people like me, I don't carry a full bag. So like a lot of my discs will swish around. I've got this in there. Now I can just like take up that space, make sure they're always standing up, or you can organize them however you want. But these are super nice.
Awesome.
These are super nice. We've also got some U-Disc whale sacks.
Ace.
This is their new character. He's my favorite. But, you always got to have something to keep your hands dry.
Yeah.
And then obviously we got a C1X sticker. So
Nice.
thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. That was fun.
Yeah, that was
fun.
great.
Always good to talk to you guys.
Yes. Cool. See you guys. Thank you. Peace.